And I thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, regrettably this bill is diametrically opposed to the Murphy report. The Murphy report was the work of a cross-party, unanimous parliamentary committee. It made 31 recommendations. It is without doubt the finest blueprint for reform this parliament, in fact this country, has ever seen. It had flagship recommendations like a phased out of gambling advertising over several years, flagship recommendation of a complete ban on inducement, flagship recommendation that there be a genuinely independent national regulator. But what have we got instead, Deputy Speaker? We've got this half-baked bill from the government that's going to be supported by the opposition that is almost entirely ineffective. No ban on gambling advertising, no ban on inducements, no independent regulator. In fact, I think the saying is putting lipstick on a pig. And then to sit in my office and sometimes sit in this chamber today, Deputy Speaker, and to hear speaker after speaker after speaker celebrating this as the best thing that's ever been done in this country for gambling, it's just downright misleading. And if this bill is the best thing this country's ever seen, then heavens, this country hasn't seen much, because this bill is going to do very little to make gambling safer in this country. I agree with the Prime Minister, Deputy Speaker. People should be allowed to have a punt. But where I disagree with the Prime Minister, Deputy Speaker, is it should be safe. We should be focusing on effective harm minimisation measures. So how do we explain this? How do we explain the fact that we had this fabulous blueprint, but yet this bill is diametrically opposed to it? Now, Deputy Speaker, you might have heard me before in this place speculate about, why is it so? Why are governments of either colour so reluctant to implement effective gambling reform? I've offered views on how governments are scared stiff of the gambling industry, scared stiff of the major media outlets, scared stiff of the power of the major sporting codes. And I think that's still in the mix. I've also speculated that some in the government are in fact fellow travellers and best mates with the leadership of gambling companies and media companies and major sporting codes. More recently, I've pondered that there's an element of just a lack of humanity among some members in this place, that people don't care enough about the shocking human toll of gambling addiction. Sadly, through you, Deputy Speaker, to the opposition haven't gone nearly far enough and haven't put enough pressure on the government. I know there's a lot of good people in the opposition, and a lot of good people who want more effective reform. And I think the leadership of the opposition should have listened to them. Listen to former Prime Minister John Howard, to his credit, who has been a leading advocate for reform in this country. And I was delighted to meet with former Prime Minister John Howard in his office several months ago to discuss gambling reform. And it was clear that the old leadership of the party was right on board to have effective reform. But I'm going to add to those reasons for a lack of effective reform, Deputy Speaker, something that I raised in question time today, and that is the corruption of good governance by the vested interests in the gambling industry, the media companies and the major sporting codes. It may not be a criminal corruption, but it's a corruption of proper process. It's a corruption of the imperative on all of us here to listen to public opinion and to formulate policies in the public interest, evidence-based policies. Let me just dwell on this for a moment. What I'm talking about. Let's talk about money. Let's follow the money. There was a very good article in the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age on the 22nd of July, and the journalists there, Natasha Chrysanthos and Paul Suckle, I hope I pronounced those correctly, they actually went to the trouble, they did the homework and they tallied up the figures. They've calculated that in the 4 years between 2020-21 and 2024-25, that according to donor records, the Labor Party received about $5 million in donations from gambling companies. And I would add the coalition received about $4.5 billion in donations from the gambling companies. Now, you can't tell me that any organisation, or individual for that matter, is going to invest that sort of money and not expect a return on that investment. If you donate a modest amount of money, you're supporting a candidate or a party. If you donate, well, that adds up to $9.5 million in just 4 years, you're not supporting a party, you're buying a party. And that is it saddens me to say that. I mean, it is an argument for much more effective reform in this space. And then you add to that, to those thumping big sums of money, all of the lobbying, the hospitality, the tickets to events and so on. It influences people, but not in just the simple way that we accept parties and candidates. They can be lobbied, they can accept donations, they can make their own decisions about policies. I mean, that's accepted. I'm not disputing that. But surely there's a line in the sand, Deputy Speaker. Surely there's a point at which those sorts of sums of money are just so big that we would agree they are unacceptable. Now, as a result of my concerns, Deputy Speaker, and I flagged this in my question to the Prime Minister in question time today, as a result of this, today I referred to the National Anti-Corruption Committee this matter. And I'll read the letter into the Hansard record, Deputy Speaker. It's only very short, it'll only take me a couple of minutes. So this was sent by me to the NAC today. And I'll quote, "I write to the Commission to express my concern that individuals in the federal government, when formulating gambling reform policy, have been improperly influenced by individuals in the private sector, most obviously but not exclusively through donations, gifts, hospitality and personal relationships. This has resulted in policy so clearly at odds with research, public opinion and the public interest that the implementation of such policy could be characterised, in my opinion, Deputy Speaker, as serious corruption in the Commonwealth public sector." What finally prompts me to raise this matter with the Commission is an article in the Sydney Morning Herald on The Age, which I've already referenced, on the 22nd of July this year. If this article is accurate, then one or more individuals in the private sector stand accused of affecting the impartial exercise of powers or performance of official duties by one or more public officials, and one or more public officials stands accused of a breach of public trust and an abuse of office. And I conclude by saying, Deputy Speaker, I acknowledge that the Commission is not empowered to investigate governments, and also that governments have the right to accept donations, be lobbied and make their own policy decisions. Nor do I make any allegation against any specific individual and trust the Commission to investigate the matter thoroughly. However, in my opinion, individuals in the government are acting so egregiously in response to individuals in the private sector that all reasonable limits on government behaviour have been exceeded. If this doesn't cross the line, then I dread to think what would. Deputy Speaker, Senator Pocock, in trying to summarise, well, effectively was summarising this matter last week, he described the situation with the lack of effective gambling reform in the face of the tragic human toll of gambling addiction in this country. He used the word tragic. I think that's a good word, but I'll add another word to what Senator Pocock had to say. That's the word betrayed, because, Deputy Speaker, the government with this bill is betraying all of the people in the country with gambling addiction. With this bill, the government is betraying all of the people in this country who are judged to be at high risk of developing gambling addiction. With this bill, the government is betraying all of the loved ones of those people. With this bill, the government is betraying the thousands of people who have suicided from gambling addiction and the untold number of people who love those people who suicided. With this bill, the government is betraying the people who have had money stolen by gambling addicts. And we know that in Victoria, from research several years ago, that gambling addiction is the second most prevalent cause of crime in that state after drug addiction. There are so many layers to this. And the government, supported by the opposition, is betraying all of those people. Deputy Speaker, let's remember this is an intensely human story. The speeches today, and I'm a bit guilty of this myself, lots of facts and figures and dates and numbers and dollars, but let's not forget this is an intensely human story. The human tragedy of this is difficult to do justice to. I'm sure that many of my colleagues have met with the sorts of people I'm describing, Deputy Speaker. The people who are battling addiction, the people who have come out the other side, the families whose loved ones have an addiction, the families, the mums, the dads, the brother, the sister, whose son or daughter or brother or sister has suicided. Deputy Speaker, I'd make the point that I have a right to be heard, and this constant heckling is not adding to the quality of this debate. Deputy Speaker, we've all met with these people. Surely we all understand we have to do whatever we can to put an end to this or to at least reduce it. And we were given that blueprint in the Murphy report. Surely we should have said, hurrah, this is great, this is the blueprint, this is what we'll implement. And we, the government and the opposition, the crossbench, we will all stare down the gambling companies. We'll stare down the media companies. We'll stare down the major sporting codes who profit from gambling. This was the opportunity for this parliament, all of us, to show real integrity. But at the last minute we're balked, and that's really, really sad. So, probably because I'm quite outspoken about gambling reform, I've become quite a lightning rod for people to tell me their stories. Like the family where mum had been gambling and losing all of the housekeeping money and keeping it secret from dad. And she was keeping secret even the fact that time and time again she was put on repayment plans by Aurora Energy for the power bill. And eventually Aurora had to cut the power off. And there was a family, mum, dad and a couple of really young kids living in a house in Hobart with no electricity, no lights, no heating, no hot water. I don't know what became of that family, but that's not an unusual story. That's the human side of this. Like Gavin Fenech, a former financial advisor who's in prison in New South Wales for stealing millions of dollars from his clients. Now, I don't in any way justify that theft. That was a serious crime, and Gavin, to his credit, acknowledges it's a serious crime and he has to do his time. But you know, think of the effect on Gavin. He had an addiction. He couldn't help himself. Think of the effect on all of his clients who lost millions of dollars. I mean, this is, again, the human face of this. So, Deputy Speaker, I will not support this bill. Now, I know there's a line of thinking that some reform is better than no reform. And to a degree, that's right. To a degree, I would agree with that, that you know, sometimes you just got to suck it up, accept that that's the best you're going to get and not support it. The trouble with this bill, though, is this bill will give the government— now, I notice a number of government speakers said this is just the start. I don't believe them. I think what's going to happen now is the government's going to say the job's done, the opposition's going to say the job's done, and this will be the end of any sort of meaningful reform or end of any reform for years and years and years, because I'll keep saying the job's done. And that's going to mean that all of the main parts of the job will not be addressed. We won't get this ban on these pesky ads. We won't get this national regulator to do a much better job than this nonsense regulator in the Northern Territory that we've got at the moment. We're still going to have inducements. You know, I'll be delighted if I'm proven wrong, Deputy Speaker. I'll be thrilled if I'm proven wrong, and in the next rest of this parliament, or maybe the next parliament, that there's strong and effective reform. But I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'm not going to support this bill, and I'm going to keep agitating as loudly as I can that the government and the opposition are yet to get the job done, because that's the fact of the matter. And I just hope that you know, over coming years, the leadership of both sides understand the human imperative of this, the financial imperative. Heavens, the political benefit to them. This was a chance for the government or the opposition to really stare down these powerful interests and show real character. They would have benefited at the next election, I reckon, Deputy Speaker, but not now. The only reason both sides will get away with it is because they're in cahoots, they're in lockstep, and they agree that very limited reform is all that the community is going to get.